Amen. Happy Sabbath once again to our TMW today. Now, with our study this morning, the last study that we did together on the summarizing of King of the North and King of the South with its application, it wasn't completed. So my study today will be focused on that, and we'll be finishing it in our study today. Our last study, we saw the history, we condensed the history of the King of the North and the King of the South, and we used triple application. And the purpose of the study was to see its application. And furthermore, in our study today, we will be looking at how we are weakened by today's mode of warfare. The questions that we went through, and I would like to ask us again this morning, was what is the difference between the line of success and the line of failure? And we have seen that in the first angel's message, all first angel's message has mistakes in the message. In every history, either it's a line of success or a line of failure, but the difference is with the second angel's message. So the first angel's message always has an error in geography. We saw that Christ, who is the second angel's message, taught a perfect message, and it corrected the message of the first angel, and Christ understood the nature of the kingdom. Samuel Snow, second angel's message, Millerite history, did not understand the nature of God's kingdom. He taught the error of the first angel's message. So the difference is the second angel's message. We are in the history of success. We don't teach the error of the first angels. So all the line begins the same, but when it comes to the second angel, we have to start switching between failure and success. And with that same pattern, we have that same pattern as the world wars and Paris. And we'll see that in our study for today. We went through for the fourth Diadochi War. We combined the fourth Diadochi War and Pyrrhic War. We combine them because of the history of Paris, and in this combining, we will miss out some smaller details, but it's still important. We won't look at all the minor details of the histories, but if you want to understand more on the details of histories, you could look back on past presentations. Now, the reason why the World War II was first given to us, we've seen that World War I and World War III gave us most of the information from 1989 all the way to 2014. World War II and the fourth Diadochi War informations are mostly given to us from the Sunday Law all the way to, from 2014 to the Sunday Law. So I would like to briefly summarize what happened in these histories. We see in the fourth Diadochi War, I've lifted up space, as I've already stated, that the first Diadochi Wars and World War II gave us most of the information from 2014 all the way to Sandelo. So here, the king of the north and the king of the south take satellite states. Demetrius took Athens in the history of Pyrrhus, and in the history of Pyrrhus, Thurii was taken. The king of the north and the king of the south, Demetrius and Pyrrhus, they form an alliance, and at the same time, king of the south attacks a satellite state. Soon after the attack, we have Ipsus. Soon after the attack, we have Ipsus, and we've been going through the study of Ipsus in our Vespers, which we have been enlightened from Elder Tess and Graham. Come down to its application in 2014. In 2014, there was an alliance. There was an alliance between Putin and Trump that is going to be used in 2016, which we know is the elections in America. And in 2014, Russia invades Ukraine. It was a conflict over Ukraine. Now, going back to the Fourth Diadochi War, we have Heraclea, Esculum, Beneventum. Heraclea, where the north and the south fight each other. We have Esculum, Beneventum, and a progressive fall or a defeat of the king of the south before it is destroyed. World War II. World War II follows a similar pattern, but it gives us proxy war between the north and the south. There was a Spanish war between the Soviet Union and Germany. In here we have the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. And this is an alliance between King of the North, Hitler, and King of the South, Stalin. And we've seen it is the same as the Fourth Diadochi War. Now, the purpose of this alliance is shortly recognized with the invasion of Poland. Hitler and Stalin went into alliance through the invasion of Poland. The North and the South versus the three allies. North and South, three allies. And these three allies are France, Britain, and Poland. Shortly after the alliance, the pact crumbles. As you can see, the board behind me. The pact crumbles, it lines up with Heraclea, but they are able to set their differences for a short period of time before it goes all out, the war of Operation Barbarossa. Now, Operation Barbarossa, it was a war from 1941 to 1945, where the King of the South was defeated. And this is a history of failure. Coming down to its application, 1989. 1989, which is an end of a proxy war between USA and the Soviet Union. And we can see a 10-year proxy war from 1979 to 1989, which is a war in Afghanistan. Now, the King of the North starts to take satellite states of the Soviet Union, particularly the state we highlight is Ukraine, since Ukraine is a country that we can thread through our waymark. So in 1989, it changes its alliance from the Soviets from 1989, Ukraine changes its alliance from the Soviet to the West. Just like in the history of Pyrrhus, theory changes its alliance from Tarentum to Rome. It did it in 1989. Soviet or Tarentum in the history of Pyrrhus did not respond. Now when it does that change in alliance in 2014, the Soviet responds. When Ukraine wants to join the NATO, the King of the South responded. Just like in the history of Pyrrhus, Tarentum invades theory, so as Russia invades Ukraine, as you can see the board behind me. Now the pact, there was an alliance between the King of the North and the King of the South. And at the same time, there is conflict between the King of the South, which is Russia, and Russia invades Ukraine, fighting over the spheres of influence. This alliance is all set up for the 2016 election. So come to 2016, we've seen the North and the South, which is Russia and America, came together to take on the three enemies. And the three enemies we have is the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. 2018, the North and the South, the North wins. The North wins, then the relationship repairs temporarily before the war in Raffia. And when we come down to 2019, Russia takes the spheres of influence and wins, and this goes a prolonged war that took us all the way to Penium. So the King of the South begins to finally fall, as we've seen the prophetic model that we have when the King of the South begins to fall and finally defeated at Penium. And in 2019, Russia takes spheres of influence and wins. The fight, which is the King of the North, will take back is the spheres of influence all the way from Penium as we have seen, and we'll clarify that more as we go ahead with our study today. Third Diadochi War. Third Diadochi War, 1989 is the end of the war. Now we have the Battle of Gabin. Battle of the Gabin is Third Diadochi War. Battle of Gabin is not part of the Third Diadochi War, but it's the end of the Second Diadochi War. So in 1989, when we do our application, 1989 is not part of World War III. It is the end of the Cold War, as we have seen when we drew our line on World War II. 1989 is not part of World War III. It is the end of the Cold War, a different war. So Second World War is lined up with the Cold War. Battle of Gabin. Battle of Gabin, 315 BC. Story of Antigonus. Antigonus who is the king of the north. Here in this battle, the king of the south is Eumenes. So Eumenes is defeated by the king of the north, Antigonus. And the king of the south, Eumenes, is defeated from the inside. So the Battle of Gabin, king of the south is defeated from the inside. And the king of the north is Antigonus. It's an ongoing war between the king of the north, Antigonus, and king of the south. And the king of the north has two alliances, Seleucus and Pathan. Eumenes, who is the king of the south, is the general that controls the east. He subdued all the satellite states of the east. When Alexander Empire is divided into many parts, and each part has its own general. And what Eumenes has done, he places puppet generals in the east, and they are also referred to as a satellite state. So Eumenes has this long conflict with Antigonus, and Antigonus travels east to fight him. East is where Eumenes comes from, and from the west is Antigonus. They have fought many battles, Eumenes and Antigonus, but this battle, the Battle of Gabin, was their final battle. Okay? All their battles and this battle of Gabin is where their conflict ended. And in this battle, Eumenes made a huge mistake. He made a huge mistake. There was a baggage train. A baggage train. There was a baggage train, unprotected, not far from the scene of the battle. And both the west and the east, both Eumenes and Antigonus, they fought with elephants. And as the elephants charged together, the dust rose. Okay? The plain dust on the ground rose. And the dust cloud was so great that both sides lost sight of each other. Antigonus took this opportunity in this cloud to sneak around the front of the battle and took the baggage train. Okay? Took the baggage train. Now Eumenes, in his army, he has the silver shield. Now silver shield, they are like a special elite group, okay? Like the Navy SEALs. Okay? So the silver shield, they were Alexander's original army. They fought under Alexander the Great, and they were his special elite group. Back in Alexander's time. Once when the empire broke up, Eumenes got this group. So this elite group, the Silver Shield, they fight under Eumenes. Okay? So just imagine this elite group, they've been fighting for Alexander, Alexander's army. So come to 315, they are still strong, even though they've reached older age. These special elite groups are still hard to be defeated. And everything that they have fought for, this elite group, are in this baggage train. Everything they had fought for, they had ever worked for, everything they had, concerning their families are all in this baggage train. So when Antigonus took the baggage train, they saw it's like they have lost all their lifetime work, because all their works, their lifetime work was in this baggage train. And then this elite, this silver shield, they surrendered to Antigonus. They surrendered to Antigonus in order to get back the baggage train. And this is where Antigonus kills Eumenes. Antigonus later didn't want the silver shield anymore, so he sends them to obscure part of the empire, divided into small groups and sent to dangerous mission. And its purpose was to eliminate them. Okay, so we can see Eumenes is defeated and he's been overthrown by his own people. So there's two things we need to remember. Okay. The Soviet Union was overthrown from the inside when the United States made the people dissatisfied. They have various measures to destroy the economy of the Soviet Union through the arms race, the space race. We have the Afghanistan proxy war. It got to such a condition that the people of the Soviet Union overthrew their own government. And the second one, we see that in 1989, there was a war on inspiration. You see, in 1989, it's an information war typified by the elephants. So the baggage train was only possible, Antigonus was only possible to get to that baggage train because of the elephants. Okay? Gabin was won by the work of the elephant, or Antigonus would not have taken the baggage train. And we've seen the next battle we have in history is Ipsus was won because of elephants. Heraclea was won because of elephants. Escalon, Beneventum, and come to Argus, Pyrrhus was stuck in the city and they blocked all the gates. His army trapped in the city and they were destroyed. Pyrrhus was killed because of elephants. So in the triple application, we have 6 battles, and in every single one of them, the deciding element is the elephant, which is the symbol used for information war. We cannot see the consistent, how consistent our story is, our mode of warfare. Back in the Third Diadochi War, King of the North had two allies. We have Seleucus and Pathan. When it comes to our applications, King of the North had 2 alliances. We have John Paul II, papacy, and the Mujahideen of Afghanistan. The relationship between Antigonus and his 2 allies then falls apart. Antigonus took the title to himself, Master of Asia, or Master of the East, because he now controls the eastern satellite that Eumenes was taking control of. So through this history, Pathan, which is one of Antigonus' allies, grew in power. So we have Antigonus, King of the North, becoming more and more powerful. King of the North, Master of the East, and he starts killing anyone who looks like a threat. And one of the threats he finds is his former allies, Pathan, King of the North, Antigonus, kills Pathan. So when we come down to its application, we see in 1989, the United States used the Mujahideen to help take down the Soviet Union. The Mujahideen changed their name to the Taliban. As you can see here in the board. They increased in power, and in 1996, they took control of Afghanistan. And the United States starts to see them as a threat. Now, the United States made a mistake in 2001, 2001, that they now recognize. The mistake they made was to confuse Al-Qaeda with the Taliban. So in 2001, the United States goes to Afghanistan and overthrew the Taliban. Why did the United States go into Afghanistan in 2001? Because Al-Qaeda was able to hide out in some portions of Afghanistan. So when they went out into Afghanistan, it was to root out and destroy Al-Qaeda. They couldn't do that without overthrowing the Taliban, the government of Afghanistan. Once they were in Afghanistan, they decided that while they were there, they might as well do a full regime change, not just to attack the Al-Qaeda, but to remove Taliban from political power. And they now recognize that this is where it all went wrong. They should attack Al-Qaeda and leave the Taliban government intact, not to try and make the political system of Afghanistan, because completely removing the Taliban is impossible, which is why they had this long war, 19 years later. But they overthrew it. It was no longer a government. Going back into history, Antigonus kills Pathan, Seleucus flee and is no longer loyal to Antigonus. The other general starts to see Antigonus that he is unilateral, has nationalistic power. And three allies forms together, form an alliance against him, Cassandra, Ptolemy, and Lysimachus. And they sent him an ultimatum. They sent him an ultimatum telling Antigonus, start acting multilaterally. All of the generals are meant to share the same power, to work together, to share the division of the kingdom. They tell Antigonus to get in line. Antigonus disagrees, and he invades the spheres of influence of his enemy, someone he never got along with, and that is Ptolemy. Antigonus and Ptolemy have never been friends. So when the relationship breaks down, the first person he's going to attack is Ptolemy, and that is the territory of called Syria in Israel, down through Israel. And we've seen that Raphia and Penium have been fought over this territory, and it's always this territory. So as you can see, it has covered, it has covered the space that has been missed from above. Okay? And it's not going to give us much detail on the latter rain dispensation of the priest. As I've already mentioned before, Fourth Diadochi and World War II gave us more information from 2014 all the way to Sunday Law. World War I and Third Diadochi Wars gave us more information from 1989 to 2014. Now there's a battle between the king of the north and the king of the south, the Battle of Gaza. The Battle of Gaza. It is also known as the Battle of Rafia, but it's not the same as the one we had in Daniel 11. It's another name, it's another battle, but they bear the same name. And we can call it the Battle of Gaza, but it's also known as Rafia. Now this is where Dmitry fights Ptolemy against the advice of his general, because Demetrius has no experience, whereas Ptolemy has decades of experience way back in Alexander's time. And we understood that Demetrius is a son of Antigonus, but Ptolemy had experience because he had been alongside ever since Alexander the Great. Now be reminded how the Russian president Vladimir Putin has more experience compared to Trump. Trump fought here in 2019 against the advice of all his generals. And what happened in 2019? What happened in 2019? Can anyone tell me what happened in 2019? Okay, let me share screen. Okay.
Putin took back the spheres of influence.
I couldn't hear you, Tony.
Impeachment.
Yes. So 2019, we have impeachment of Donald Trump. Oops. So can anyone read to us the paragraph that I have highlighted?
Trump's impeachment came after a formal House inquiry found that he had solicited foreign interference in the 2020 US presidential election to help his re-election bid, and then obstructed the inquiry itself by telling his administration officials to ignore subpoenas for documents and testimony. The inquiry reported that Trump withheld military aid and an invitation to the White House to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in order to influence Ukraine to announce an investigation into Trump's political opponent, Joe Biden, and to promote a discredited conspiracy theory that Ukraine, not Russia, was behind interference in the 2016 presidential election. A phone call between Trump and Zelensky on July 25, 2019, was particularly important. Whistleblower Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman was a participant in the call and later informed Congress.
Okay. So we can see from 2019, the impeachment of Donald Trump. Okay. Ptolemy wins, he defeats Demetrius, but then Antigonus comes back and he drives Ptolemy back to the borders. Eh? Okay, let me share screen again. So this is Antigonus, and Ptolemy is all the way here. And in this battle, Antigonus comes and drives Ptolemy back to the borders in Egypt. So we have Antigonus here. This is in the battle of Gabin. He takes back all his spheres of influence from Ptolemy, and then he decided to go back to Egypt. He has two destructions. We have Seleucus and the Nabateans. Nabateans, these are the descendants of Ishmaels. Ishmaels. Seleucus in this battle have gone back to Babylon. Here, Antigonus is going to make peace with his three enemies: Ptolemy, Cassandra, and Lysimachus. And it is called the Peace of Dynasty, except for Seleucus. Because Seleucus is, and then Antigonus will go into a Babylonian war, as you can see up here on the board. Seleucus is, Antigonus is going to go into a Babylonian war with Seleucus, and Seleucus will win the war and begins the Seleucid dynasty. So in the United States, it has been an ongoing war with the Soviet Union over the spheres of influence. And we've seen one of their allies was the Mujahideen, renamed to Taliban, and they became more powerful. They took the government in 1996, and then in 2001, the United States overthrew the Taliban, turning on their former allies against the wishes and advice of the other allies. They turned their attention to Iraq, at which point in time, other nations of the UN started to recognize that the United States is not playing by the rule. And they say to the United States, just as the three allies here in the Third Diadochi War, Cassandra, Ptolemy, and Lysimachus, sending an ultimatum to Antigonus. There were three allies: France, Russia, and Germany, three allies. They sent an ultimatum to America. They say to America not to invade Iraq, through the international law. We looked up the word ultimatum. And ultimatum in international law. Can everybody see my screen? Sorry, I have to stop screen.
No.
Not yet.
Screen. Ultimatum. International law. What does ultimatum mean in war? In international law, final definitive terms submitted by one disputant nation to the other for immediate acceptance or rejection. Since refusal to accept the terms may lead to war or hostile measures, an ultimatum usually constitutes a conditional declaration of war. So ultimatum is a condition. France, Russia, and Germany, they sent an ultimatum to America, telling America, if you try to invade Iraq, we will stop you through international law. And as like Antigonus disagreeing, the United States, they didn't care. They just invade Iraq. And we can see that in 2003, which was the spheres of influence of Russia. Yeah? Iraq was the spheres of influence of Russia. That is the history when we go back to the history of the Cold War. Yeah? Just like Antigonus attacks the spheres of influence of Ptolemy. Yeah? United States invades the spheres of influence of Russia. So come to 2019, we have this battle, the King of the North and the King of the South over those same spheres of influence. The King of the North, which is Donald Trump, fought against the advice of his general, and he loses. Right? So King of the South, Putin, shut himself off of those spheres of influence. And now Trump or the state is going to come back and piece by piece going to take back what it has lost. So in 1989, everything was taken back to the borders of Russia. Okay? 1989 is Panium. We've looked through that line of the end and the beginning are the same. So from 1989 to 2001 will be like 2019, 2021 to Sunday law. Yeah? So the United States wouldn't be able to take Russia because they had two enemies. We have the papacy and the Nabidians, okay? the Nabidians. And there was a peace made on that front. There was a war between Penium and Sandilo between the United States. And August 15, 2021. Okay? August 15, 2021, we've understood how the United States begins to withdraw and the Taliban took over the country. There was a I think there was an agreement. There was an agreement made in 2021. There was a treaty. Yes, February 29, 2020, USA and the Taliban, they signed a peace agreement in Doha, Qatar, and it's titled, officially titled, the Agreement for Bringing Peace to Afghanistan, known as the Doha Agreement, which brings the end to the 2001 and 2021, 2001 to 2021 war in Afghanistan. World War I. World War I, we have Bosnian Crisis. Yeah? We have the superpowers fighting over the spheres of influence. Superpowers fighting over the spheres of influence. Austria-Hungary takes the spheres of influence from Serbia. Now, Austria-Hungary represents USA, a two-horn power. Excuse me. Russia is supportive of Serbia, but is too weak to respond. So in 1989, the United States take the spheres of influence from Iraq, and this is the Gulf War. Because of the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia is too weak to protect Iraq. And as we've already stated before, Iraq is the spheres of influence of the Soviet Union in the Cold War, just before Serbia to Russia in World War I. So World War I gives us a prophetic explanation of the Gulf War. Serbia does take this well, and inside those states, the Slav states, a terrorist organization formed, the Black Hand. And the Middle East is not happy with the intervention of the USA, and out of this intervention, a terrorist organization was formed, which is the Al-Qaeda. Now we can see the difference between Taliban and Al-Qaeda. We see the Taliban, they just changed their name from Mujahideen to the Taliban, whereas the Al-Qaeda was like a terrorist organization. So when the Black Hand strikes here in the history of the World War I, there was an assassination of Franz Ferdinand. Austria-Hungary wanted a war with Serbia over a long period of time. And they used this excuse, which is this assassination, to begin World War I. Yeah? We've seen how the United States wanted to overthrow Saddam Hussein for a long time. And this was an excuse to invade Iraq. But first, the Austria-Hungary had to send an ultimatum to Serbia. And it's such a severe ultimatum. They want all of Serbia to hand all sovereignty, all sovereignty. And sovereignty is a supreme power, supreme power or authority. So Austria-Hungary wanted Serbia to hand over all their authority, the supreme power to Austria-Hungary. Their ultimatum premier to the Iraq war, this member of the UN, they sent an ultimatum to America, but America again sent an ultimatum to Saddam Hussein to hand over sovereignty. Serbia fulfills almost all of it, except giving up its sovereignty. Iraq fulfills almost all of it, except giving up its sovereignty. The other countries thought Serbia had done enough and there would be no more war. Other countries thought Iraq has done enough, but in fact, there was an Austria and Hungary invades Serbia, which begins the world begins the war on the two fronts. It begins the war between the West and the East. And in this war in the East, they were having difficult winning. So they came up with a plan. They are going to overthrow Russia, which is the king of South, from the inside. Lenin had been hiding in Switzerland for many years. So they will take Lenin, put him on the train and push him through Russia so he can overthrow the government. So Germany used Lenin into Russia to overthrow the government and establish a government that could make peace on the Western Front. Lenin does that with the Treaty of Brest-Litov. The Treaty of Brest-Litov. And this is a peace treaty, and it is a loss, but it is a loss to Russia. They lose so much in this peace treaty that is used as an excuse later on to have a harsh term to Germany at the end of the war, which is the Treaty of Versailles, as you can see right at the end there. So we can see World War I is a history of failure. This treaty goes on until Germany loses the war on Armistice Day. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's not the official end of the World War I. Germany had lost, but they don't really know it. They certainly don't know the extent of it. They think every side is stepping back. And then some months later, they met in Versailles and they recognized for the first time that they have lost this war. We have this Bosnian crisis. It explains the Gulf War and the interaction between Austria-Hungary and Germany and Serbia. In the interaction between the United States and Iraq, Russia was too weak to defend Serbia because it was experiencing an internal revolution, and Russia was too weak to defend Iraq. So the Soviet Union here is experiencing an internal revolution. Internal revolution. Come to 2003, there was an information war that starts to play out. This is the information war between the United States and Russia. This is the Eastern Front of World War I, and where World War III began in 2003. So Germany is going to end this Eastern Front by changing the government of Russia. He has overthrown the government. See, November 8, the election in the United States, Trump is declared the winner on the November 9, but the election was held on November 8. That's when Trump wins here in 2016. Trump was sent by Vladimir Putin. It was an international plot to end this war, and it ends here in 2019. I think we understood about Cambridge Analytica. So there was harsh terms for Russia. They lost so much territory, and harsh terms also for the United States. Germany had other problems in November 11, 1918. They surrender, but they don't think they had lost the war to any extent. It's here, the Treaty of Versailles, they realized their loss was officially ended. We've seen the history of Battle of Peniam. Peniam is a defeat, not death. The war is not finally ended. Russia has to fall and die. We've been going through the studies on Vespers, how the simple, but when it comes to reality, how complicated the reality is. So these 5 wars in history gives us this comprehensive view of the United States and Russia. It gives us the Eastern Front in two parts, okay? From 2003 to 2019 and 2019 to 2021 onwards. Okay? And when we combine them, we understand World War III. It shows us all from 1989 all the way to Sunday Law. The interaction in the Middle East through Afghanistan, through Iraq, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, 2016 election, and it shows 2019 in two parts. We have both a battle and a peace treaty. As I've already mentioned, the treaty that was signed in February 29, 2020, there was the agreement signed in Doha, in Qatar, known as the Doha Agreement. So World War I begins in 1940, Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, 1970, and the treaty was signed on March 3rd, 1918. What began on the 4th of March, 1918? Just after the treaty was signed.
Disease, spread of disease.
Sorry, I can hear you.
Spread of the disease in America. COVID, I think.
Yes, the Spanish flu. The day after the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, the day after the treaty was signed, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk begins the Spanish flu epidemic. Okay? And why is that relevant to us? Why is that relevant to us? We come to 2019, November 9. November 9 is a close of probation for the line of the priest. And November 17 of 2019, the first recorded case of COVID-19. So throughout 1918, from March 4, the Spanish flu was worldwide. It began directly after the treaty. Spanish flu did not begin in Spain. It was called the Spanish flu because Spain was so shut out from the rest of the world when it occurred in Spain. The Spanish thought that it was only occurring in their country, but it didn't begin in Spain. Spanish flu came from an animal source. They couldn't pin it to a certain variety, but the closest it could come was a variety of birds. Yeah? It became worldwide in a short period of time, a widespread epidemic in world history. So we can see that there are nathanims today looking back at 1918, and they're recognizing that it's repeating, the 1918, the Spanish flu, 2018, COVID-19, worldwide epidemic. And in our reform line, we can overlay the two. This becomes very important when we think of two things. One is we always have two choices between two methodology, line upon line and conspiracy theories. Coronavirus was a worldwide epidemic that was not a government plot developed from an animal source and was extremely serious. So the nathanims are saying, we are repeating World War II, Hitler is Trump. They are correct. The nathanims are saying, we are repeating the 1918 Spanish flu. They are correct. There are some differences between World War II and World War III. There are also some differences between these two epidemics. For example, millions of people were killed in Spanish flu because everyone was so physically weakened by the World War. We are not in a hot war. The population is not as weak. We are in the information war. So the suffering is not so much the death count. The consequences of this virus are the information attack. And that's the war. That's where we are weak. It destroys the EU, NATO, UN, people trusting the government in their medical system where it's doing the most damage is because of an information war. And that war won't be reflected in the death count, but it's just as dangerous how this virus has been used. The damage it's been doing because of information. The consequences of these two wars are in these two streams of information and how it's been used. And this history from 2019 to 2021, it's just not it's not just the coronavirus. In the line of the priest, fractal lines of the priest, 2017 to 2041, the dispensation where we can label as the plagues. So from 2019 to 2041, for example, the forest burn in Australia, where billions of animals die. And later in 2020, February, rain, there was rain, it helped put out the fire, but it took a massive ash, sweeps it to the river, and it destroys the river. In Africa, they are facing a locust plague from between 2019 and 2021, and we've been seeing how things have been going when we look at the world today. So, so to conclude for our study today, it's not just the coronavirus that is showing our time of trouble. We can see the virus from the perspective of the plagues. We can connect it to World War I, the Spanish flu that is demonstrated in our reform line. And the greatest danger is not the death count. The greatest danger is the conspiracy theories, because people are weakened by the information war. That is what we have to guard against. Right? We've seen from the question that I asked earlier that all reform lines begins the same in the history of success and the history of failure, but somewhere in that reform line where the second angel comes in and it corrects it, and there is a switching between the World War, the first angels, the line of success, and the line of failure. And so as in the world wars, which is, we know the World War I and World War II is the counterfeit of the truth. And when we are making applications by using methodologies, we are able to draw out the applications in our line. And as we've been going through our Vespers class on the two streams of information, the importance of the midnight cry message, it has to awaken us. We've seen how prophecy, how using triple applications of World War I and World War II, and to get applying triple applications, knowing the informations on World War III. I guess that ends our study for today. Let us all, if you can kneel with me, let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear God, we thank you so much for for the enlightenment, for the messages that you have given us. Thank you, Lord, for our elders. We are able to see how prophecy has been fulfilling before our eyes. And what's important, Lord, is how we straighten ourselves up with a message to go in line with what's happening externally. I thank you, Lord, for the Sabbath morning. We thank you for all the TMW, the Zoom participant participating, studying with us this Sabbath morning. Thank you, Lord, for the message we had this morning, and we ask for your Holy Spirit to guide us through for our next presentation, Catherine's presentation. Thank you, Lord, and we ask for your blessings. Ask for your blessings for this Sabbath morning. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.